So while I'm cooking dinner, I'm getting in VEDA Day 12. And today I'm going to talk about my creative, artistic history, past, my story, essentially. And I kind of wanted to do this as a post-mortem to the song that I wrote and published the other day, because I think I surprised a lot of people. I think a lot of people I know who watched that video did not realize that I even knew how to play guitar. So I want to talk about that. So ever since I was a kid, the arts have been a gigantic part of my life. And music especially was a big part of my journey. So in terms of what we were listening to around the house, we listened to a lot of country music. We listened to a lot of 50s and 60s, aka oldies music. A lot of jazz, a lot of Broadway, a lot of Disney. I wasn't exposed to a lot of modern rock and roll or pop music until I was a teenager. So anything from kind of the 70s to like 1997 was kind of lost on me until I was a teenager, with some exceptions. So that kind of covers where my influences come from in terms of external consumption, I guess, in the early years. And of course, like most kids do, I sang along with a lot of what I was listening to. And throughout my childhood, I did the usual things that kids do that are artistic. Like I did crafts with my mom and colored in coloring books and drew. I was never very good at the drawing. Never quite resonated. And of course, music. My first experience with performance started in preschool. I went to a private preschool kindergarten that was in somebody's basement. And I remember they kind of set up this little stage area in the back of the basement and set up chairs, and we all got up and sang a bunch of like kids folk songs, essentially, like the alphabet song and Itsy Bitsy Spider and stuff like that. So I got my first taste of performance pretty young, and I was hooked, which I don't know, I feel like it must have surprised some people because I was otherwise a very shy and standoffish kid. So even that early, I can see how music kind of gave me a voice. So then moving into elementary school, the school that I went to growing up was a small town school. It was 1st through 8th grade. There were about 250 kids in the school total, public school. And the way that the music department worked at school up until the point where I was in 5th grade was each class had an hour-long music class. And the curriculum was kind of a mixture of music appreciation and singing and a little bit of performance. We did 2 concerts a year. We did one during the holidays, and then we did a second one in the spring, usually in April. And then there was also a chorus for the 5th through 8th grade. It was an extracurricular thing. It was more like if you were interested in doing more with singing, you joined that and lost a recess a week. Sometimes more when it got closer to concert time. And for kids that had a kind of stronger interest and aptitude than even chorus could contain, there were a limited amount of solos that were kind of given out on a merit basis. And for the kids that was the case for, usually around 4th or 5th grade, that was kind of recognized as one of your things, I guess. I happened to be a solo kid. When I was in the 4th grade, there was one day, probably about a month and a half before the holiday concert, and the teacher decided that she wanted to pick 2 4th graders to sing a duet of Away in a Manger. And she made every 4th grader audition for this part. And skipping over some of the story there, I ended up getting the part. And what ended up happening was the day of the concert, I came down with like the worst case of the flu I think I have ever had that day. And I remember my throat was on fire. But like I remember going to rehearsal during the morning and pushed through, and it sounded great. And then I went to lunch and ate lunch, and I had a carton of milk, and then that carton of milk just triggered the throwing up, and I ended up throwing up, had to be sent home. And because I was so sick, I ended up missing the concert, and the little boy who I was supposed to be doing the duet with, he had to do it as a solo. And apparently, as the story was later told to me, while I was out sick for I think, almost 2 weeks afterwards, some of my classmates were very insistent to the music teacher that because I missed this concert, I had to have a solo in the next one. And then from then on, I had a solo or a duet or trio, whatever the mix was, in every concert until I graduated 8th grade. There was an extracurricular drama program that happened at the school. I was part of 2 productions that I remember. I think it was 2. There might have been a third. I think it was just 2 though, which was in 3rd and 4th grade. That was open for 5th through 8th grade for speaking parts and solos. And if you were in the 3rd or the 4th grade, you could be part of the children's chorus. If I remember right, that was the year that we stopped doing the twice-a-year concerts. It was only held in the spring. It was, I think, 1st through 5th grade participated in it. The middle school grades did not. There was a big change in the curriculum that was being presented to the middle school kids, which was much more music appreciation and drama based, which I believe was kind of in response to the fact that the kids that were in the upper grades at that time were much more interested in causing chaos and trouble than they were being serious about the arts. But even though the upper grades weren't included in those shows, those of us who had been kind of the soloist kids were still included in those. In terms of extracurriculars that were not related to school specifically, I started doing dance lessons in the 5th grade, and I did that from the 5th to the 9th grade. And my memories of that can kind of be summed up with feeling like I didn't belong. Because the dance school that I went to, and I think this is probably a common experience in many dance schools, is 5th grade is really, really late to start dance classes. Most of the kids that I was dancing with had been dancing at that school, in fact, since they were 3 years old. So dance classes were this experience of being pushed to my limit and feeling like I was never quite good enough, but was probably actually better than I thought I was. I was also part of a couple of drama productions, I think in 6th and 7th grade or 5th and 6th grade, I can't remember. Somewhere in that vicinity, which is through a tiny dance/drama. So that is sort of my background between birth and 14 years old. It was largely a very positive experience. I thrived in that environment, and things were great. And since this is getting kind of long, I'm going to crop it here and come back either tomorrow or the next day. I'm not exactly sure when I'm going to fit this in, and talk about what happened from high school until now. And let me know in the comments what your experiences were with the arts growing up. Was it a positive thing for you? Was it a negative thing for you? I would love to know. And love your faces.